Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are taking an epic journey to track the 40-year, ever-escalating real-world power level of one of the most recognizable properties on the entire planet, the Dragon Ball franchise. What started out as this quirky little comic strip heavily influenced by ancient myth and kung fu movies has absolutely exploded into a global, multi-billion-dollar juggernaut. I'm going to walk you through exactly how that happened, telling the whole story of Dragon Ball from its legendary origins right up to its monumental 40th anniversary future. Here is the roadmap for our journey today. First, the roots of the dragon. Second, the story and power. Third, the anime evolution. Fourth, a billion-dollar empire. And finally, we'll wrap up with the 40th anniversary future. Let's dive right in. Part 1. Roots of the Dragon, spanning from the 16th century to 1984. So, to really understand Dragon Ball, we actually have to rewind to 1984. The creator, Akira Toriyama, was wrapping up his massive hit comedy manga Dr. Slump, and he was looking to pivot to a martial arts adventure. He pulled directly from classical literature, loosely modeling his new story on the 16th century Chinese epic Journey to the West. The legendary Monkey King Sun Wukong? Well, he became our monkey-tailed protagonist, Son Goku. The traveling monk Tang Sanzang was reimagined as the teenage genius Bulma. But instead of traveling west for sacred texts, Toriyama gave them this brilliant, game-like objective that young readers instantly connected with, hunting for 7 magical wish-granting orbs called Dragon Balls, which was an idea he drew from classical wish jewels and Japanese folklore. Now, despite its legendary, almost sacred status today, Dragon Ball's creation was actually highly improvisational. Toriyama famously outlined his early story totally on the fly. Because he was heavily inspired by the comedic martial arts of Jackie Chan's film Drunken Master, the early days of Dragon Ball were way more focused on gag comedy and whimsical adventure than the universe-shattering battles we know it for today. In fact, Toriyama originally thought the whole story might just end once they gather the 7 balls for the first time. Moving on to Part 2, the story and power from 1984 to 1995. The narrative evolves so dramatically during its 11-year run in Weekly Shonen Jump. When Toriyama's editor kind of hinted that Goku seemed a bit plain, they introduced a world martial arts tournament to give the story a fighting focus. And wow, this changed everything. The plot took a massive leap. We literally went from a whimsical boy looking for magic orbs to fighting a genuinely evil demon named King Piccolo. Then, in this brilliant pivot, Goku is revealed to actually be an alien from a warrior race called the Saiyans. Suddenly, the scope just explodes from protecting Earth to battling intergalactic real estate tyrants and time-traveling androids. The stakes escalated quite literally to a cosmic scale. But the true turning point of the entire franchise was, without a doubt, the Super Saiyan. To defeat the tyrant Frieza, Goku taps into a legendary genetic mutation fueled by pure anger. And fun fact, the iconic blonde hair? That was actually a practical choice to save Toriyama's assistant the time of coloring Goku's hair black in the manga. And those piercing green eyes were directly inspired by the paralyzing glare of Bruce Lee. This single transformation absolutely changed anime action storytelling forever. What's really crucial here is how this established a completely new narrative device. Dragon Ball effectively pioneered the trope of power scaling. By using quantifiable power levels and a constant stream of new, visually distinct transformations, Toriyama created a metaphysical ranking of strength. In the Dragon Ball universe, conflict isn't just about who has the cleverest strategy, it's about literal, quantifiable power. A new threat requires a whole new tier of strength to overcome it, and that drove immense narrative tension that kept readers hooked for a decade. Let's jump into Part 3, the anime evolution, covering 1986 to the present day. It was Toei Animation's adaptation that truly strapped a rocket to the franchise and catapulted it into a global cultural phenomenon. We can consolidate decades of television into one core, digestible timeline here. We start with the original Dragon Ball anime in 1986, which adapts Goku's childhood. Then, in 1989, Toei rebranded the adaptation of the adult Goku years as Dragon Ball Z, which, as we all know, became a global smash hit. After a really long hiatus from the main continuity, Dragon Ball Super arrived in 2015 to introduce the multiverse and the gods of destruction. And most recently, in 2024, we received Dragon Ball Daima. But even beyond that primary timeline, the property sustained massive global interest. Toei created an alternate continuity called Dragon Ball GT in the 90s. In 2009, they released Dragon Ball Z Kai, which was a faithful, filler-free recut of the Z anime. Combine that with a staggering 21 animated feature films and a long-running promotional web series called Super Dragon Ball Heroes, and you have an intellectual property that simply refused to fade away. Which brings us to part 4, a billion-dollar empire, looking at the modern era. Let's use our power level metaphor again to describe Dragon Ball's modern real-world dominance. Just look at this number, 260 million. That is the staggering amount of Dragon Ball manga copies sold worldwide. It establishes an almost unimaginably massive baseline audience. It's not just a comic anymore. It is a globally recognized mythology that crosses generations and borders. And to really drive the financial scale home, take a look at this figure, $3 billion. That is the lifetime player spending for just one mobile game, Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle. Seriously, let that sink in for a second. A simple puzzle RPG based on nostalgic character collection has generated more revenue than many major Hollywood blockbuster franchises combined. It's wild. As of 2025, Dragon Ball is actively outcompeting major Western and Japanese gaming franchises on literally every front. In the console space, Dragon Ball Sparking Zero moved over 5 million units in its first few months, capitalizing perfectly on pure 3D fighting nostalgia. In mobile, like we saw, Dokkan Battle remains a multi-billion-dollar giant. And in the physical space, the Fusion World trading card game has opened up a highly profitable, rapidly growing collector's market. It is an unstoppable, multi-pronged empire. And finally, Part 5, the 40th Anniversary Future, 2024 and beyond. But what happens when an empire loses its emperor? Following the tragic passing of Akira Toriyama in 2024, the franchise released Dragon Ball Daima, which was a project Toriyama was intimately involved in crafting. The series forces Goku and his friends to navigate the demon realm after being magically turned into children. This series perfectly bridges the gap. It provides nostalgic, adventure-focused storytelling for the adults who grew up with the original manga, while offering accessible, incredibly fun character designs for an entirely new generation of children. And the pipeline is only escalating. Announcements from the January 2026 Genki Damatsuri event proved the momentum isn't slowing down anytime soon. We're getting a brand new Fall 2026 TV series retelling the introduction of Beerus, a highly anticipated anime adaptation of the Galactic Patrol manga arc, and finally, the Age 1000 project confirming the Xenoverse 3 video game. The content pipeline is as robust as it's ever been. So, as Dragon Ball enters its 4th decade and navigates a future without its legendary creator, we have to ask, can the immortal nature of this intellectual property continue to escalate to new power levels indefinitely? What started as a whimsical riff on an ancient Chinese monkey myth has evolved into a multi-billion-dollar permanent fixture of global pop culture. Can it scale forever? Well, if the last 40 years are any indication, the answer is a resounding yes. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Until next time, keep training and keep learning.